So I got a call last week from this sweet elderly couple wanting to sell their home of 40 plus years. Classic story, downsizing, moving closer to grandkids, etc. The house was a beautiful mid-century in an area that's absolutely blowing up. Here's where it gets weird. When I went for the initial walkthrough, the husband, let's call him Frank, was super friendly, but his wife, we'll say Martha, seemed really hesitant. Like she'd agree to everything, but I could tell something was off. Fast forward to listing day. I'm there early to stage a few things, and Martha pulls me aside looking totally stressed. Turns out she didn't want to sell at all. Frank had basically steamrolled her into it because their kids thought it was time. The poor woman was in tears, talking about her garden and how all her memories were in that house. I've made a call I've never made before. I pulled the listing that morning. Told Frank we needed to talk. The three of us sat down, and I basically mediated their first real conversation about this move in months. And that is a story from a Redditor named Worth Cheesecake 771, who's a real estate agent, sharing one of her crazy stories that she experienced with sellers and not having both sellers on the same page. We have stories that echo those that we'll share in this podcast. Yeah. And with that, welcome to House Einstein Podcast 93. I'm your host, Osman Parvez, and with me is Hamish Crabb.
Hello. It's good to be here, Oz. 93.
93. A lot of pods under our belt at this point, and we are rolling on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, before we get... Well, go ahead, Hamish.
Read the intro, but it totally makes sense now that the Tales from the Trenches, those two relate perfectly. I'm excited for the full story and Tales from the Trenches.
We've got our own stories to share, and they're not spooky stories yet. I think we need to roll those out next week with it being mid-October, but they are stories that might surprise you about what happens in this industry at the closing table, literally at the closing table in this particular case, and what types of things real estate agents do to keep transactions moving ahead. It might surprise you, and we'll save the haunted house stories, which I've got those too for next week, including my own personal experience with what felt like a haunted house. But before we dive too deep into this pod, let me just give you a quick disclaimer. This podcast is entertainment. If you are a client of the brokerage House Einstein, we welcome your phone call or emails. We're more than happy to answer very specific questions unique to your real estate situation. If you're not a client of the brokerage, then you're welcome to consider becoming one. You can reach us at houseeinstein.com. But for all intents and purposes, otherwise, this podcast is entertainment. Please do not make any major real estate or minor real estate decisions, frankly, on anything you hear in this pod. And with that, let me jump into the rundown so you have sort of a table of contents of what to expect in this podcast. Our core topic is something we call the closing table, and we're going to talk about the risks inherent in buying an unusual property and the types of things you may want to think about before you sign on the line on one of those properties that seems like a great deal. It's been on the market a while. Maybe you can't figure out what's wrong with it, and your real estate agent isn't bothering to tell you what's wrong with it. Well, let me walk you through how to think about that type of situation. And then we've got our Tales from the Trenches. I just hinted at that. We'll be talking a little bit about the risks that sometimes come from sellers who are not on the same page and that you didn't even know about it. And also sometimes the opportunities that come from a couple that might be splitting up. Not that anyone wants to truly capitalize on someone else's misfortune, although there's that quote from a few weeks ago about that being the basis of real estate. It really isn't, and ethically we don't try to seek out those opportunities, but sometimes they present themselves nevertheless, and sometimes there are economic benefits from a distressed sale situation. So then we're going to walk into our market conditions. And in this particular pod, I'm going to do something I don't think I've done before. And that is drill down into the City of Boulder inventory by price range, because I feel that this is a analysis very difficult to get. You won't find it. I haven't seen it from any other agent. And it's once you know how to build this analysis, it isn't that difficult to do, but it could be really useful to you as you try to understand what's going on in the City of Boulder if you're a buyer or a seller here in our fair city. So I'm going to walk you through that drill down. And then we've got our sales of the week. We've got five properties to talk about today. Everything from luxury homes with massive potential on Old Tail to entry-level condos right on Broadway. We've got a really brief segment that we call Shameless Self-Promotion, where we share what one of our clients might be looking to buy or sell. And then we talk about the news. And in the news this week, we have the Caribou Village fire up in Nederland. We have a really heated minimum wage debate that's happening and that's forcing businesses to close in Boulder. And we also have mortgage rates hitting their lowest level in a year. And then to wrap it all up, we have a segment we call Carveouts. And Carveouts are anything that Hamish and I have top of mind that we want to talk about, that we just want to talk about, and you get to go along for the ride. So that is our Podcast 93 game plan. This podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more. And Hamish, do you have anything to add to that? What do you think?
No, I'm stoked to see the closing table topic without having us dive right into it. This should be a good one, and I think unusual property type leaves it open enough to be like, well, unusual good and unusual bad, because there's kind of the two sides of unusual, right?
I mean, I suppose that's one way to frame unusual. Rare, it could be rare on the good side, rare on the bad side, but it isn't straight up the fairway. It doesn't fit. On Nantucket, where I got started in real estate, we called this the Nantucket model. And buyers coming to the island had sort of a vision for what a Nantucket home should look like, a luxury high-end home on Nantucket, usually understated on the inside and truly stunning on the inside, with particular color schemes and a design that is just very classic Nantucket. And if you were to build something that looks like it belongs in Aspen, it would feel very out of place in the Nantucket market and take a very long time to potentially sell. And the same thing is true if you reverse them. If you go to a luxury home up in Aspen and it looks like it's something from the seashore on Cape Cod, it's going to feel strange. And it will take, in theory, longer to sell, or you're going to leave money on the table when you go to actually attract a buyer. You'll have to price it pretty low to get a buyer interested in something that doesn't fit their mental model.
That reminds me of the home in Table Mesa that's got the Spanish-style architecture, when the majority of the other homes are like your standard kind of developed 60s, 70s homes.
Right, exactly. And that was a great house, really solidly built. It sold this summer at a lower price than I expected. We could pull up the address, but it's really not relevant.
We did discuss it in a sales of the week. I just couldn't tell you which podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I can find that house, but it just doesn't fit the rest of the neighborhood. It just looks so out of place. Yet, if you drive, 6 hours south into Arizona or New Mexico, drive even further, you're going to see that style everywhere. But up here, it's out of place. So that's what we're going to talk about. What happens when you are thinking of, what the potential risks are when you're thinking about buying a property like that.
Yeah.
I guess we're just jumping right into it.
I think so.
Keep going. Is that what we're doing, Hamish?
Yeah, and I think, do you have like a high level drill down on this? Because one of the points that I just like, for some reason, just want to bring up is like, these homes are typically like the most updated or the most pretty, like the ones that take a long time to sell or have some sort of compromised feature about them are the most done up to try and attract a buyer. I don't know if you noticed that too. Yeah,
it's 100% a trend, and I've noticed it consistently over the last 20 years. I haven't quantified it because it's something that is difficult to quantify in an analysis, but it's so obvious once you've been a market participant for a few years. You start to see these homes that that really look amazing inside, but might be on a very busy street corner. And for example, Moorhead, right? Moorhead in the city of Boulder backs right to US 36. It's constant traffic. And not just that, the traffic has become much more obnoxious in recent years, particularly late at night. There are usually young men on sport bikes that they've modified the exhaust on, and they're just screaming up and down US 36 at triple digits, with bouncing off the rev limiters, and they're super loud. And it isn't just impacting Moorhead, which backs the US 36.
The whole,
It's impacting most of Martin Acres. And so if it's truly right up against Moorhead and you see traffic from the back of your house, that is something that is going to be very difficult for a buyer to overcome. And perhaps you bought it at the right price. That's the ideal scenario. And now when you sell it, you're also going to sell it at a large discount to the exact same house 2 or 3 houses inboard of that location, where that will no longer be as much of a factor. And that can be very painful for people to have to discount the home that much or invest more money into updating it to get it to sell. But that's what is required when you buy a home that's in a compromised location. And if you're not willing to do that, I'll be quite frank, I'm not interested in a listing, because it's really just a recipe for an unhappy relationship. Yeah, we're just going to have an overpriced listing for 6 months to a year. And during the course of that 6 months to a year that we are your agent, you're getting progressively more disenchanted with us. And it's not our fault. We're doing the marketing. We can show you the data that we're getting the eyeballs, but we literally have people come up to the house and then turn around and not even go inside because of the location. So it has to be really compelling from a price point, and it has to be really compelling from an update perspective and also a design perspective. But let's get into design too, because that's the other sometimes form of a compromised home. Or maybe compromise isn't the right language there. It's just a property that appeals to a very narrow segment of potential buyers. And homes like that have bedrooms on the lower level, have a split layout, right? Where you have a bedroom in the basement, one on the main, and one in the upper level. Appeals to a very small segment of potential buyers. It doesn't fit the mental model of the family buyer. It doesn't fit the model of the downsizing buyer either, because they've got the primary is usually the bedroom on the upper, right? And they've got mobility issues. So there are all these people
planning to have them.
Or maybe not planning to have them, but are likely to have them, and are concerned about that. Hopefully they don't have them. But when you choose a home that is narrowly targeted, like our listing this summer, that is mixed use with 2 bedrooms on the upper and an office on the main, and that main can be used for commercial purposes. That's a really rare property type. Commercial right now is also getting killed. So the attractiveness of that type of setup, where you can live upstairs and work downstairs, you can have your family upstairs and your clients visit downstairs. There are lots of people you would think that want that. But as a percentage of total home buyers, it's probably 5%. And when I bought my mixed-use property, which we currently have our office in, it had been on the market a while, which is indicative of it being of limited appeal. And I still got a great deal on the place. I'm very happy I bought it. It's been our office for many years. It's a good rental. But I'm a unique market segment. And if and when, and it probably will never happen in my lifetime, but if I decide to sell that property, I'm expecting it to take a much longer time period to sell. It will likely not fly off the market unless we happen to time it perfectly for the right buyer being in town. And that's just how it is with these unusual property types. And the third one is buying a home that is out of line with neighborhood valuations. So this is buying the proverbial most expensive house, the most expensive house in the neighborhood. Like, there's that saying, buy the cheapest house in the best neighborhood. Well, this is sort of doing the opposite. You're buying the most expensive house in an okay neighborhood. Well, now you've got a problem, because other buyers are going to come in and they're going to see that there's not a concentration of similar valued homes, and they're concerned that they're buying into a location that doesn't support the valuation. And they may not have the language to say it like that, but that's really what's going on, right? Like, they don't want to buy a luxury home in a middle-class neighborhood. It just feels off. They don't want to be the ones that are perceived in that neighborhood as the richy rich ones that rolled in, right?
Right.
That also doesn't feel good to them, and they often don't say these things.
Yeah, it puts you kind of on like a neighborhood pedestal. Everybody's like eyeballing that one house, right?
Everyone either thinks you grossly overpaid, or they have expectations of who, like they have judgments of you, and I've seen this play out where buyers, for example, there's another form of that. I don't want to call it discriminatory, but it is. It's a social discrimination. So these clients bought up in Devil's Thumb, and Devil's Thumb, the socioeconomics of Devil's Thumb are pretty affluent and also skew quite a bit older than my buyers were. And my buyers had young kids, and when their kids got into elementary school, they discovered most of their friends don't live anywhere near there. They live further down the hill. And there was a few slights or some sort of communication that my client received about being perceived as kind of the Richie Rich family up on the hill. And they didn't like that at all. They didn't like their kids being perceived that way. All of this social stuff is actually really important to think about when you're buying.
Especially for enjoyment of like living there, you know?
Well, true. And also you have to be careful as an agent to not run into fair housing law, right? Because you could, in advising your client, you could be potentially violating fair housing law. I mean, I had a client point blank just say it to me. They were older, they were affluent, they were moving here from another community, they had been business owners, and they said, Osmond, we're just looking for a neighborhood with people like us. And I was like, okay, I think I get it.
Yeah.
Let's get you to the golf course neighborhood stat, because they're going to have a lot of people that are very similar socioeconomically, and you'll probably feel more comfortable there. And I don't think they were necessarily being prejudicial, right? They just they're spending a lot of money. They want to live
their own
comfortably.
community, right?
They're seeking their community. And and unfortunately in this day and age, I feel that people get really uncomfortable if there are disparities in wealth among a group of people. Like, doesn't feel like you can't hang out with people unless they're similar. They have the similar affluence to spend on vacations, or the similar struggles that they're working on. Yeah. And that's kind of a weird thing, but it is clearly what is out there in the world of real estate. So when you buy something that is out of place in some way, you could find it much more challenging to sell. It could also be a very large home that's a triplex, right? We had one of those. It's a gorgeous property, but it's an unusual property. The one that we listed this summer, spectacular home, one of three in a triplex in a neighborhood with much smaller condos and townhomes that are half the size, but also some single family houses that are the same or even smaller sized. So it's just an unusual product in the mix of options. Yeah. People that could spend that much money usually look for a standalone house. So you have to overcome the hurdle of taking them to one of triplex that's a very large, gorgeous property, but also you're living in a different form of community, not your own little standalone house with your own all four walls, right? You're in community with a shared driveway. That sort of stuff, all of those things create hurdles to the decision to buy. And where that comes to bite you as a seller is in the future, when maybe it didn't bother you, but it will bother potentially a large number of future buyers. And a good agent will at least warn you that, look, this is a cool property. I see how happy you are, but this shared driveway situation is really tight. And I just want to bring it up that there's a certain number of buyers that are going to be in this price point, the majority of which are probably not going to be excited by this driveway. So just want to give you a heads up, because someday I hope you call me to sell your property. And at that time, we may be on the market for a long time. Like, let's look at the sales history of this property. Have there ever been a sale that happened really fast? Have they all happened really fast? Or have they been slow? And if it's got a history of 180 plus days on market, you know what you're looking at is a property that probably is... it's probably going to take a while to sell.
I think, you brought up the Martin Acres Index, and now it's the Ranch Home Index. As small kind of, that's index, like the small ranch. Yeah, it's like the... kind of like the every person's home, right? Because it fits so many people's mental models of a home. The buyer pool is very, very large for that type of home. And incrementally like filter it down depending on the unique characteristic of the property that you end up selecting. And
it just
right?
works for a large number of buyers.
It
would work if it was
got a huge buyer pool, and then the further you kind of get away from the small ranch index, the smaller your buyer pool, and the more unique and difficulty you'll have getting the home, or potential difficulty getting the home going.
Well, I would argue that it actually is below the optimal. Like I would say that those are only 3-bedroom, 1-baths, and most people want 2 baths. And most people want more than 1,400 square feet. So the problem is that the middle is missing in Boulder. And so we've become a city of luxury or a city of entry. And more the entry levels are being converted to homes that are larger and more substantive, more expensive, and much more difficult so the small ranch index is really the entry level. There's lots of demand, but if the price was right and it was a larger home, there'd be even more demand for something that had 2 baths and a little bit bigger than your standard small ranch.
Good point.
But the last piece I want to add is that there's also a level of customization that we sometimes see that will make a home unattractive to the majority of potential buyers. And a few years ago, there was a house in Fraser Meadows that was on the market for multiple years, and they had done so much custom woodwork in a Japanese style, and that Japanese style, it was really unique. And they were expecting somebody to want to pay a premium for all this gorgeous, unique customization that was clearly crafted by artisans, right? It was not your average everyday cabinetry. It was Japanese influenced. It was gorgeous, but also really weird. And unless you were really into that style, which is unlikely, you're not going to jump all over this. You're going to say, I'm actually going to want to pay less than...
Because I'm planning on and factoring in the cost of making it my own, not this custom,
Yeah, I don't see the premium value. I love the house from a layout perspective. We can fix some of the layout stuff that's not right, but all these unique Japanese customizations...
It's also a Fraser Meadows home, but this isn't the one with the bathtub in the middle of the primary bedroom, is it?
I think it might be that one.
Okay,
I think it's the same house. Yeah. Like a bunch of other choices that they made that...
certainly are choices.
Are choices. Well, they're choices that I'm sure made the owner very happy during their tenure. Yeah. But they made those decisions without thinking about the future impact on marketability. And as an agent, part of what our job is to keep you from, well, at least advise you that this is a potential. We're not going to keep you.
Make you aware of it. Yeah.
Right. You should at least be aware of it going in. I've done my job. I can sleep at night. And when you go to sell it in the future and we have a 6-month to a year-long period in the listing and they're not getting a lot of showings or we're getting a lot of feedback that says, boy, this just doesn't. Like you're going to have to, you may have to neutralize the house of all of its customizations. But some things you can't fix, like it's up against a busy roadway. Like you could potentially do some screening with vegetation or fencing, but you really can't move the house very easily. So, and the city makes it very difficult to do permitted things like additions and remodels of certain trigger points. You will have to get a permit. So
maybe getting a little far on this, but have you, if you're going westbound on Iris from like 28th, there's a house and the fencing is like river rock that's kind of like caged. Have you seen that one?
Yep. That
Do you think that's any good for sound?
That is what it's designed for, is sound screening. Yeah. And that home is owned by a very affluent tech investor. And he's very
it's a sweet
very generous in his philanthropy to organizations throughout Boulder, and so I know who that is. It's a very large estate that's tucked in there, and there's that very heavy duty river rock sound wall that's been placed between the mesh wire to create the fencing, and that's what that is designed for,
really
is to limit the impact of Iris. So you can fix with enough
money,
enough resources. Enough money, you can fix it to a large extent. That's true.
Yeah. Came up, and it's cool you know about it, because that immediately came to mind.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention is that house is not on a corner, because on a corner you have to maintain sight lines, so-called sight triangles. You can't go right to the corner with the fence. you have to allow for safety to be able to see around the corner. So
I see. Like a diagonal cut for the motorists.
It's something that's very important to understand, because don't expect to be able to, even if you have large resources available to you, unless you want to buy the neighbor's house too, or buy the whole corner, like you're going to have a problem with site triangles and the City of Boulder. Like you're really going to get creative. And even then, if you bought all the neighbors, you still have the problem if it's a public street. Like what are you going to do about that? And hopefully your agent is advising you about these things, because most people are ignorant of all of these impacts to in the market, to the decision they make. And it's a decision that the future is 10 years away, 7 years away when these come to bear. And the best thing you could do is choose the right house to begin with. That's why we put so much attention on selection in the first phase of working with buyers.
Yeah. Also, I don't know, and I don't want to exhaust this too much, but when I was like building my car, I was really conservative in all the modifications that I made because I didn't want to deter any future sellers. And it eventually got yeah.
This is the car with the engine swap?
Yeah.
That's
and when
conservative? Okay.
I all of the things that I did in the swap, I made sure were reversible because I didn't want to lose a buyer pool, and I could at any point put the car back to the stock engine. And then it got to a point where it's like, you know what, this is mine, I own it, I want to have fun. Is there kind of like and I mean, like I'm going to pay for it, or maybe not, because it starts to, the analogy is wearing thin, but that's kind of like a mindset even now, like with the house that I'm in, is I had fiber installed over in my bedroom on one end of the house. So forever, the next homeowner, whether or not they know, they're going to have to put the router and run cat cable into the center of the house so that there's better Wi-Fi signal. Or they'll always have like a router in the room. You know, it's kind of this toss-up I think you as a buyer might have to think of when you're making these modifications or buying these homes with these kind of unique characteristics.
If you're an expert in E30s and the market for modified E30s, you know. I don't know anything about those things.
Gets a little,
and that's also small potatoes compared to buying a house.
Totally.
And really, it's ultimately up to the owner and the buyer who becomes the owner to make decisions on modifications. But it's always smart to have a consultation, in my mind, with a design professional. And we've seen, if we're going to do the analogy, I've seen countless examples of poor design choices made by do-it-themselfers. And then they hope to get their money back out or make money on poor decisions. And if they had hired a professional designer, they would have saved themselves a lot of heartache. That's
a good point.
You can see that this is a coming to reality time period happening for the seller, and the market is telling them how it's perceiving this property. And sometimes people just don't want to hear it, and they want to wait and wait and wait, and then that's totally their decision. I mean, this is the fourth quarter, so it's a season for disappointed sellers, and we're going to get really into that detail with the drill down into market conditions in a few minutes. But I would again just say, if you chose a good agent, they should be adding things that you didn't already know, right? Like they should be offering you a contrarian opinion, politely, respectfully, guiding you with advice, not shoving their opinions in your face. That's a very different energy. And that agent wouldn't survive very long if that's their attitude. Like they know better. That's not what I'm talking about. I just think it's important to be honest about the deficits as well as all the great things you see in a house. And if all you hear is great things when you're running around looking at homes with your agent, you probably chose a bad agent.
Yeah, I'd want to know the gotchas. I'd want my agent to be able to, tell me the gotchas. So. Well,
I'd also want to work with somebody who's fun, right? Who I enjoy their company, who's funny, but also has my best interest in mind. And they will tell me things I don't always want to hear because they would like me to at least know. But they shouldn't. I try really hard not to be a stick in the mud, right? Like
You've got the 2-time rule, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't want to be too negative, but especially if my clients love the place. But I do want them to know what I think is potentially a problem. So there you go. All right, let's move on, Hamish. We've talked about buying these unusual types of properties, locations. We've also talked about price points as being a really important distinction within a cadre of homes in the neighborhood. Are you making sure that home fits the neighborhood from a price point. And we've talked about customizations, waiting a long time to sell a weird house, a unicorn house, and how it likely will end up selling below your expected value or take a much, much longer time period to sell than you thought. But let's now, if you're cool with it, let's move on to Tales from the Trenches.
I'm cool with it. So this is back off the opening story or quote where one party wants to sell the home and the other party doesn't necessarily. Well, what do you have?
Okay. Well, so here's how it goes. When you're looking at homes and you've been doing this a long time, there are signs of what's going on in the home. And sometimes, for example, you'll see in the primary closet, half the closet is empty. And yet there are two sellers involved in the deal. Now, it's possible that one of the two people, and they're usually a couple, one of the two people have already left the home for a new job and the other person is joining them. Or it's also possible the couple are divorcing. And another telltale sign that adds to that is if not only are half the clothing removed from the house, but there are no photos of the two together anywhere in the house. There's just the photo of one or the other with, if they have kids, with the kids. Like, those are the types of signs you're like, okay, I think they're probably getting a divorce. We don't know that for a fact, but it's probably what's happening if they're both on title, right? There's a good chance that that's the scenario that's unfolding, which gives you a little hint into maybe they're motivated. Right, like it's been on the market.
Good point.
Like, so you can
from a buyer standpoint, yeah.
Right, so we're representing the buyer. We're walking around the house. It's been on the market. It's been on the market 3 months or longer. They bought it years ago, so they have tons of equity. Clearly, it was a family house, and now one of the two are no longer in the house. And especially if there's no photos. If there's no photos of the other person anywhere, then it usually adds up to they're probably splitting up. Which might also mean they're very motivated, and that's a very good low offer target. Like, you're more likely to be successful with a low offer if it's a stale listing and they're motivated. Like, that's not rocket science, and 100% that's what people are people that are sophisticated and are like to negotiate are looking to try to understand, why is this home being sold. So the story I'm going to share is the next step in that possibility and the risks potentially involved with a divorcing couple in a transaction. And in this particular case, we were representing the buyers. I don't remember what we had negotiated from a sale price perspective, but I think it was pretty good. That's my vague recollection. And the deal was interesting because when I pulled up the title records, I saw two names. And I asked the listing agent, what's going on? And the listing agent said, oh, the other person's already off title. The records aren't just updated. And I said, oh, okay, great. I believed her. And that turned out to be a mistake. So let's fast forward. We're now almost completely through the transaction. We're past inspection. We're past appraisal. We're past what used to be called loan approval. I think it's called buyer's availability deadline is now what it's called. We're literally a day from we're actually the day of closing, and I'm not there because I'm driving to Burning Man in a U-Haul full of things, including two box freezers full of frozen food for my camp, and I'm outside of Fort Collins into Wyoming when the phone rings, and it's our favorite title person, who I don't want to drag their name into this, but this is how they largely became my favorite title person when they called me. And they said,
call them Martha.
We have a problem. And I'm like, what sort of problem could we have? And she said, the seller's wife is on title. I'm like, oh, I was told she wasn't. Are you sure? I'm like, oh, I'm sure. And she's now in the office. We called her to get here. She's not on any of the contracts. She's not on anything.
Of course not. Yeah.
And she's really angry and upset, and she doesn't want to sell the house. And I said,
she doesn't
oh my
have
God,
to, right?
where are we with what is happening? And basically, at that moment, the wife could have just walked out of the closing room, and that would have been the end of the deal. And I'm not even sure who's in default. Like, can you imagine the mess? Because legally, the husband didn't have the right to sell the property without the wife's signature. She's not in default. The husband didn't have the legal right to sell.
Did the husband lie to the agent?
Yes.
Okay, so the listing agent at least didn't know either.
The listing agent supposedly didn't know either.
Yeah.
The listing agent didn't know.
Okay.
And so I asked our title person what needs to happen to get this deal to close. Now remember, our buyers are ready to move in. Yeah, all of their stuff is also right. They're ready to get the keys and move in. And this is what's happening at the closing table. And so what I ended up doing was whipping out my laptop, drafting an amendment to the contract, adding the seller to all of the contract and the amendments, and sending it back to the title company. And she called our title person called me back and said she's really upset. They are fighting in the closing room. And I said, okay, can you just do this? Can you just walk in there with this document, put it in front of her, and tell her if she wants to sell it, this is what she needs to sign to sell the property. But can you also not give this person legal advice, because we would like to buy this house and not have a complete blow up.
Oh my gosh.
And our title person's like, absolutely, I'm not a lawyer. I don't give legal advice. And she walked in there, and she put it in front of her, and the seller's wife, this also a seller, signed it, and we closed. And they were really upset. Really, really upset that the house had closed. But not they both, but the wife was really upset. But she signed it, and we closed. And the takeaway. So what are the lessons of this? Okay. So let me start with, I feel bad for the wife, but my job here is to represent the buyers. Mm. And that means not advising the other side on their legal option to walk away from the closing table.
Was the agent not there?
And I don't know. I wasn't there. It was my assistant at the time.
Not have been either.
There. And I think the listing agent was there, but God knows what she was doing or they were doing. I don't really remember their involvement in this.
Clipping their fingernails, as we've seen some other listing agents do.
Or just left. I don't... Oh, wait a minute. I think this was a deal with a discount brokerage.
Oh, okay.
Now that I remember the address, I'm 100% sure it was. Because we had negotiated a really, really good deal on this property.
Oh, so you were stealing it as it was.
We were getting a fantastic deal, and this seller had chosen a company that does discount listings. They give you basically no support, and so that means I was basically having to answer questions from them too, which creates a conflict. I don't think I got in any sort of trouble on this because I was advising only. I was not advising.
Yeah, you weren't playing both sides.
I was representing and advocating 100% for the buy side. Yeah, and we closed, and then less than a year later, we resold the house for $100,000 more, which I'm sure stung them again because they were local and they saw that they had given up $100,000. And my clients made no improvements to the house during that time. They just decided they wanted to move back to Table Mesa. Sorry, they wanted to move back to California. This house was in Table Mesa. And I don't want to say anything else about what happened.
Yeah, that's probably enough.
Except some of the take-home lessons from this. And the most important take-home lesson for me was when you get the title commitment, look at it and see if the names on the title commitment match the names on the contract that is executed to purchase the home. Because you could be dealing with one of the two in a divorcing couple, and the other one doesn't really know what's going on. That's really problematic. Yeah. And of course, if she was elderly or she was mentally challenged or handicapped, this would be a very different story, right? This was a normal functioning adult.
Whoa. Yeah.
Elder abuse is what that's called, and we don't do that. But if it's a normal functioning adult that just was having a relationship problem and didn't want to sell the house for so cheap and was pissed at her divorcing husband... Like, that's not my problem.
Usurped, whoa.
You can decide what you want to do at this point. But they decided to sell it, and we resold it about a year later for about $100,000 more. And my clients were extremely happy because commissions were fully covered. They made money. They lived in Boulder for just a year. But the take home is, make sure when you get the title commitment that you read the names and check the contract, and don't believe the listing agent because they may not know. And this listing agent did not know.
In my mind, I'd be like, okay, well, like I looked it up, and because you did, and you see the wife's name on there. You talk to the listing agent's like, oh yeah, no, it hasn't updated like county clerk and recorder, right? For that kind
That's
of
what they
document.
said. And
yeah.
I now know not to believe that without something in writing from the title company, because we would have been out the cost of inspection, we would have been out the cost of the appraisal, we would possibly lost earnest money. I mean, it would have been a dispute. It would have been really messy. Plus the moving costs.
And then I'm thinking, like, Ian had that fraudulent seller that I think pretended to be the name of somebody on title, right?
That was with a land deal, and that's another form of actual fraud that's out there, where people are impersonating sellers, listing homes without the seller's, listing property without the seller's permission. It doesn't have a house on it. It's just land. And lo and behold, the property really isn't being sold by the actual owner. It's being sold by a scammer that's impersonating the owner.
Okay.
And hoping to get through the transaction. And these have become less common, but they were actually quite common for a while. And Ian, a member of our team, ran into that actual situation representing the buyer of a property that was falsely advertised for sale.
Yeah, I'll link that too. That podcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Good lessons learned. Also, I can't imagine you were in the, driving to Burning Man, hearing this happen on the other line.
This was happening on the side of the road, on the side of the highway, with my laptop.
And you're
the moving truck. We're parked there for about an hour while I'm like on the phone, drafting amendment, waiting, breathed the biggest sigh of relief once it was signed. And it's interesting because it poses an ethical question. And that ethical question is, who do you represent? You represent the buyer. I represented the buyer in this case. I had no affiliation with the seller. I didn't know I knew that they were splitting up. I was told something that was not true. And I prepared the documents to the best of my ability to allow the transaction to close. And then it was the seller's decision on to sign or not sign. But the fact that they were literally fighting with each other at the closing table, and she was very upset, I thought this deal's done. And we got lied to by this company. And I really want to throw this company under the bus because they have the worst customer. They've had the reputation of having some of the worst customer service. Every deal with them during that time period was a nightmare. And this isn't. It's probably one you may not know of because they've sort of faded from being that prominent. But we'll leave it alone at the name because I don't want them to sue me. But I will tell you that every deal we did with them was a disaster. And yet they advertise themselves as offering such a big value to their sellers by being a discount commission brokerage. I just was astounded that they got as much business as they did. But people are so drawn to getting that discount.
Saving a few bucks. Yeah.
They think they're getting such a good deal, yet they're not. And the negotiation that was handled by the other side, and frankly, the fact we were able to sell it easily a year later for $100,000 more in a market that wasn't particularly materially different. It was just poorly marketed and poorly represented. That was the problem with that listing, and my clients benefited from it.
Good tale from the trench. You'd asked when we were like planning if you'd said this one before, but there's no way you've mentioned this in the level of detail that you did. I'm really glad we brought it up.
I mean, my heart dropped when I heard what was happening in the closing room and why it was happening. And
we got to take lunch again.
I had an email that said that the wife was off of title.
Oh yeah. So if you've got it in writing too.
So another take home is when we are called to represent divorcing couples, which we have been, we also verify who's on title, and if one of them says something like the other person is off title, we check with the other side. And frankly, we move everything to email because that way we can communicate with both parties at the same time without them having to hear each other's voices. Very transparently. Which, with people when that container of a marriage is broken and now they're selling their most valuable asset, it can be really, really difficult to try to communicate with both of them. So now, and because of our past experience with navigating that with couples, I now know we need to establish the ground rules early so that we don't get pulled sideways by the chaos going on in their lives, that we can focus on our job, which is to help them sell the house for maximum value with minimum hassle and reduce their liability in the transaction. That's what we're doing. And we're not picking sides.
That's it. Okay.
I don't really want to hear about the husband's infidelity or the wife's infidelity stories and what a jerk they are.
Yeah.
Please don't share those stories. That's what your therapist is for.
Yep. And we're not going to. I was like, we'll change our structure to include that. No, that's not a service.
No, we're not licensed for therapy, and I'm not going to pick sides. No matter what, unless they, even if they've done something illegal and it's demonstrably illegal and unethical, maybe I'll pick sides. But I'm still going to behave as professionally as I possibly can because that's our job. All right, let's move on from our tale from the trench for you today.
We digress. Yeah.
I would do things differently. That's all I got to say is I now know that the cheaper the listing brokerage, the less quality service you're going to get, the less reliable the information is. And if it potentially compromises my client, I'm going to dot the I's and cross the T's, because we can't be having people show up at the closing table finding out that the people in the room are not in agreement on selling the property to my clients. Like, that's a problem.
It's almost you have to do more work when the other side is a discount brokerage, because you are now having to verify and then some everything that they tell you.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Also, why I don't like transaction brokerage, I don't think it should exist. It does exist in the state of Colorado. We have rules for how we handle transaction brokerage. We don't have dual agency, which is even more fictional than transaction brokerage. But they're very challenging because you usually have loyalty to one or the other. You can't really be neutral, and that asking for neutrality is really just make-believe. It's delusional.
Fantasy.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to data. All right. This is market conditions. And I did something that I don't normally do. And I do it for my clients, and I do it for the Fresh Listings newsletter, but I don't usually do it for the pod. And I have often looked for this from other brokerages, other realtors, and I don't see it. And it's an analysis of the market by price point. So rather than just telling you that in the City of Boulder there are 55 houses under contract, these are single-family houses out of a total of 265 available, that gives you 21% under contract, right? That tells you the market actually is balanced, because economists say 5 or 6 months of inventory represents a balanced market. Well, 20% is roughly 5 months of inventory, right? 20% under contract. That's about right. Yeah. So that would tell you, oh, great, the market's finally balanced, but it isn't really. And what I'm going to show you, let me see if I can share screen, is the analysis by price range, and not just how many homes, but also how many homes are available, but also what percentage of those homes in each price tranche are under contract. And hopefully this makes sense, and it's going to be a little small, okay, Hamish? So I don't know if you can make that full screen, if it's going to be big enough to see on the YouTube or not, but basically,
the service works with us pretty well on this one. Yeah. Okay,
great. So what you're looking at in the first two columns are the price range. And I did $100,000 tranches. Really, the market doesn't have anything going on in the City of Boulder for single-family houses until you hit $600,000, right? So below $600,000, there's one home on the market. I don't even need to look at it, because I'm sure it's either so compromised or it might even be affordable housing, right? It probably... there's really nothing under $600,000 that you're going to see worth buying, and even the $600,000 to $700,000 range are likely homes with material deficits. These are homes that are in really compromised locations, or they have a cracked or destroyed foundation.
Strictly single family, like condos.
This is no condos. Yeah. So that's the price tranches on the left, and the column C here is the available homes, meaning the number of homes that are on the market. That are not under contract, and then you have the homes that are AB plus P. AB is active/backup, meaning that they're under contract, seeking a backup offer, or they're in pending status, meaning that they're no longer seeking a backup, they're thinking they're going to close. And then this next column is the percentage. So it is you've got 1 out of 5 of total inventory. So that tells you that's 20% under contract of the available inventory in this $600,000 to $700,000 range. And it's actually $699,999 because there'll be listings that are precisely 700. So which tranche are they in? Right? Are they in the 6 to 700
Nicely
or the
done.
700 to 800? And then, of course, I always double check the count at the bottom to make sure it adds up. There are 265 total. And of the 265, 55 are under contract. And then when you look at it on a chart, so now I'm going to scroll a little to the right. We're going to ignore the table. And you're seeing blue bars. And the blue bars represent the volume or the number of homes that are available, or the number of homes that are sitting here, right? The total number of homes. Let me make sure I got this right. Yeah, the total. Both. This is the combination of under contract and not under contract.
Right.
Does that make sense? That's the blue bar.
Yeah, your x-axis is the prices. Yeah, the price tranches. Okay.
Yeah, the x-axis, the horizontal axis, is the price ranges, and the number of homes that match those price ranges are the bars. So 700 to 800, you can see, have 14 homes, and so does the 900 to... Did I got the column right? No, one more over. Kind of hard to see. The next column over is 1 to 1.1.
Oh, no, okay, it tracks.
Also has 14
It'll be good on the
homes,
video.
right?
Yeah.
But you can pretty clearly see that the lower end of the market has more availability, and then the orange line is the percentage of those homes under contract, and it corresponds to the right side axis, right? So this is a double.
Yeah.
There's two axes for the Y. There's the blue bars that go to the left, and then there's the orange line that goes to the right. And you can see that in these earlier price tranches, the lower end, you're seeing pretty much 50% of the market's under contract. And then there's a dip from from $1 million to roughly 1.5. It's quite a bit lower, right? You're looking at more like 10 to 30% under contract. In this zone, there's a quick spike up again. For some reason, this particular price tranche, which, boy, I'm having a hard time seeing it at this angle. I think I'm just going to look at the table. It's easier to see at the table. Because you can see right here, you can see 1.6 to 1.7, 50% of the homes are under contract. And then it dips back down again. And then it jumps up one more time in the 2.7. You're once again getting into 44% under contract. So that's really interesting. There are these segments of the market where there's very little under contract, and then there's a segment where suddenly it pops up to a much higher percentage. And then if you look further up the food chain, right, start looking past...
I see 100%?
Yeah, we're going to get to that. So
okay.
At the very end. So let's keep working up. So once you get to 2.8 and up, you start seeing almost nothing under contract. 2.9 to 3 million, right? That last tranche in the high twos, 17% under contract, which is an anomaly. There's 6 houses in that price range and 17% under contract. But look at the rest of this. All the way up, keep going up to 4. You're seeing nothing under contract. You're seeing lots of homes, nothing under contract, all the way till you get to 5.2 to 5.3. Now there are 3 homes and one of them is under contract. That's it. And then for some reason, there's 2 houses in the 5.4 to 5.5 range, both of which are under contract. So that's why you see this sudden spike.
Sure.
There are 2 houses, both of them under contract, so boom, 100% under contract. But basically, those are little outlying anomalies. Most of this is really low, 0 or low double digits, 17%, 11%, but the majority of it is 0, 0, 0, 0, nothing under contract, plenty of availability. This is what I've been talking about for months, that the high end is getting crushed, except for a couple of weird spots, 5.2 to 5.3, there's 1 of 3, and then, which could just be arbitrary luck, and then 5.4 to 5.5, both of those houses are under contract, and then above 6 is really such a weird, unique animal that I'm just going to glom them all in because we've got these super aspirational listings at 21 million, make-believe listings. There are 19 homes that are currently priced above, and of those 19, I think it's just 1 under contract. Let's see. 1 of 19 is under contract. So 5% of the listings in that price point are under contract. The takeaway has been what we've shared on the podcast before, but now you can actually see the data yourself, that above a certain price point, and I would say that price point really is 2.3. I mean, sure, the 2.7 to 2.8 range has 4 out of 9 listings under contract. But for most of the other price tranches, it's very low. It's usually 0. And then there's anomalies. So you see anomalies and zero. That's what I see. And that's what I advise our buyers that are looking in $2+ million homes, particularly 2.5 and up maybe is where you want to start, maybe even 2.3 and up. One, you should be really selective, and you should be very aggressive to walk away if you're not getting the right home at the right price, because there's lots of availability. And these homes, if I did days on market, you would see how stale most of these listings are too. And of course, the irony is there are these high-end listings who I adore. They're lovely humans in their own little wacky ways, and how they market themselves as how confident they are, and boom, just got it sold. And you think, oh man, this person must be selling so many homes. The answer is no. They're not selling tons of homes. Nobody is selling tons of homes in the high end. The high end is dead. And your agent, if you're choosing well on the buy side, should be aggressively negotiating, aggressively helping you choose the right house, and helping you not feel like you're going to lose it if you don't go higher, helping you to decide to walk away and find a better deal, especially in the fourth quarter. That's the takeaway at the high end. If you're choosing a listing agent, I'll be frank with you, if you're in this price point 2.5 and up, I'm going to tell you you're going to have to stage it right, price it right, and it could be a very long time on market. We'll track the market weekly or bi-weekly so you can see what's going on with the competition, but you're really going to need to dial in that listing to get it sold. And if you're not willing to do that work, I don't want the listing. And in fact, if it's questionable, I may ask you to pay for marketing up front, because I don't think it's going to sell. And I told the seller that this spring, who actually is a friend, that he's going to lose money on this thing because he overpaid 2 years ago and the market's not there anymore. And and if he thinks he's getting what he paid for it, we're just in for a year-long disappointment. And then he's going to be pissed and want to fire me after a year because it didn't sell. But it's not me, it's the market. So if that's what I'm going to take on, I want him to pay up front for the marketing cost, because I don't think if he wants to list it at what he paid for it 2 years ago, we're just going to have to, we can test it, but he has to be prepared to lose some money. We decided to stay friends, because I'd much rather be friends than the agent he's pissed at. And it did sell for a lot lower than what he paid for it 2 years ago.
Sucks to see as a friend.
It does. It does. Yeah. So let me do that same analysis really quick. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
These anomalies, I'm wondering if they're, and maybe it's too much to continue to watch, but I wonder if they are negotiated discounts from aggressive buyer agents, or adjusted prices in 2.7 to 2.799. There's the $250,000 tranche there, right? Like $250K. So I wonder if it's crossing a line and then the buyers come active or something. I mean, there's not enough here. It's a small sample size and all sorts.
I don't think it's how it works with higher end buyers. So there's this concept in economics called price elasticity of demand. And basically what that means is that the more you move up in price, the wider the price range of acceptable prices become. So a buyer that's willing to spend, let's say, $1 million on a house is probably only looking up to 1.1, right? They really don't want to go over $1 million, but they're not looking to 1.4 or 1.5. It's just unrealistic as a percentage of their starting point. But a buyer that's spending 2 or 3 million probably could buy for 4 or 5 million. They're just arbitrarily saying, let's target around 2, but they really aren't fixed to 2. So
let's wait and see it lower at this price, or something.
Yeah, their flexibility is much wider, so they might look at homes that are 3.5 million. And what I'm trying to say is that a stale listing at 3.5 might be way more negotiable than a brand new listing at 2.7, and you might get that 3.5 down to 2.9, which could be a much better house, way more house for the money. And that's the equation you should be thinking about, is should I be looking a little higher up the food stream to negotiate a better deal and get a lot more house for the money in this market, because these types of conditions don't last forever. And we are in at least year 2 or 3 of down market for the high end. And it's sort of with the dollar down 10%, the stock market booming, and interest rates starting to drop, this might be the last fall of discontent. The market could be in recovery in the spring. So this is a good time to be aggressive at the high end.
Yeah.
And if your agent isn't aggressive, call me. I'm just going to add that last little piece. That's what we do, is negotiate. And we'd be more than happy to talk to you about your strategy relative to what you're really looking for and help you negotiate a fantastic deal.
You didn't pull this data for kicks.
or push you to walk away. And that's the thing people are often surprised by. Like, you will hear it from me twice that I think you could get a better deal. It's up to you if you want to pursue it at this point, but there are other options. Here are the pros, here are the cons. Now you decide. But and that's one of the reasons we look at, like, what's sold in the last 12 months that fits your criteria. What else sold in the last 12 months in this neighborhood that you're really in love with? And if you see dozens of options that sold in the last 12 months, well, the next 12 months are probably going to have dozens of options. So you can probably walk away from this one. But if you see just one home that matches these criteria that sold in the last 3 years, well, this is the one, right? The odds of you getting another one are not that high, so you have to make a decision accordingly. There's no guarantees, of course, but that the data at least reflects what's happened in the recent past.
Yeah.
All right, let me do the condos. Let's see. I see stop. Is that the right button?
Are we doing condos real time?
Nope. Wait a minute. I got to stop sharing. So I think
don't stop the recording.
It just says stop. I think this is.
Is it that red square on the bottom left?
There we go. Share something else. Okay, let's share. Let's share the correct window. That's this one. Okay.
Unscheduled interruption.
Unscheduled interruption to the podcast. So this is that exact same analysis, but for condos. I've also narrowed the price point because there's no point in going above 4 million, and even arguably above 3. There's almost nothing, right? And you see this little low line. I don't know if you're looking at where my cursor is, but you see how little there is. There's like one house in each of these price tranches. 2 houses in this one. So the upper end of the market is full of one-offs. Right? There's not a ton of inventory of attached dwellings. They are really a market of their own. And you can't really extrapolate data when there's 2 listings and one of them's under contract, which gives you 50% absorption. But you can look at the entire zone, right? I would start it right here at 1.9. So from 1.8, look, these are all one-offs, right? All the way to the 3.9 to 4 million zone. That's where there's 2. And in one case, you've got 50% under contract, which means 1 listing under contract, and the rest are nothing under contract. So there's 1 listing under contract above 1.8. Nothing else is under contract. So that's your first takeaway from this chart at the high end. Now look at the other side of the market where look at the availability from 200,000 to 1 million. You've got double-digit inventory. And in that double-digit inventory, you have the most under contract is 30% under contract. So in this particular case, it's sort of the opposite of, I guess it isn't really the opposite of the house market, but you have a lot more leverage to negotiate, a lot more options at the entry level. Of course, HOA dues have gone through the roof, so you have to take that into account. Prices have also come down quite a bit, but you're looking at anywhere from, let's call it, 3% under contract, which seems really strange that there's 34 and only 1's under contract. That looks very suspect to me. I would want to double check that data. That looks strange. There's 33 and only 1 under contract. Okay, I got to double check.
There are some dogs down at that price range, but
there are. That just seems really strange. But maybe that's the case. I'm gonna double check that after the pod. That just strikes me as off, and I don't want to do the formula analysis now to double check. But because I think this is accurate. But yeah, you're looking at low percentages, 1/3 at most, 30% at most, until you hit 1.3, where there's 1 listing, and that's under, that's this big orange spike. That's the 1 listing that is under contract, right? Yeah. But mostly it's very little under contract. So leverage is on your side, I would say, pretty much at all price points.
Yeah,
maybe
I bet
not quite as much
to
below.
Be over 30% anywhere if you averaged it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's basically your takeaway. And after the pod, we will.
Let me know, and I can cut in to this point and update the listeners.
I can look at really quickly myself. I just find it really strange. Like, yeah, sure, there are lots under 300,000. I'm seeing a total of whatever this is. What's this number? 36. My screen is slightly cut off on these screens. There it is. 36. 36. 35 under 300. And then when I go to pending and under contract, there's only 2. Don't know why. That's strange. That tells you something interesting. I'm not sure what that tells you, but the data's right. The analysis is right. There's a very small number under contract. I think.
Would you look into that in Fresh? Maybe it's a good plug for Fresh.
I mean, it's a very strange phenomena to see that. There's one in the 200 to 300 zone, and there's one in the 100 to 200 tranche. So there's two total under 300,000, and that's what the spreadsheet shows too when I check it manually.
Yeah.
So the analysis is right, and I don't actually know why that's the case. Why are there so few entry-level buyers? Interesting. I don't have a good reason.
TBD.
That strikes me as strange. Other than maybe people are just sitting on the sidelines. It's also quite possible that homes under 300,000 are just so dilapidated and junky that people aren't willing to spend 300,000 on these. Like, they don't see the value.
Or absurd HOA dues, maybe at that extreme price sensitivity.
I mean, let's just look it up. We'll just do it live because it's really curious. So when I look at the MLS, now let me add that this analysis is based on what I call Boulder proper, and what that means is, hang on a second.
It's not strictly Boulder City. It's
no, because agents screw up this coding all the time, and I don't trust them to actually code it right. I just messaged the MLS because somebody coded a Broomfield property as Boulder locale. Like, it's just incompetence. So, but the geolocating of what is the city, I believe, and people have a general perception of what is Boulder proper. So that's what I have as a map, right? It doesn't include Gun Barrel, and it doesn't go into the mountains. And it basically is it runs along Cherryvale and Old Tail. That's what most people think of as the city of Boulder. And then I look at, we were just looking at attached, and we're just going to 300. And we're going to see everything that's coming soon and pending, right? That's everything. There's currently 40, so slightly different number than I had before. And when we look at this 40, let's see what we're looking at. Okay, so the first one's City of Boulder affordable. City of Boulder affordable.
Oh, that could be it.
Affordable. So I think this is what's happening here, is that most of these are affordable housing. 2707 Valmont is not, which is interesting because frequently there is a waiting list. 3035 O'Neill is a really rough. Stratford Park is a very rough spot, really poor build quality.
Real quick, these are active listings. Are we disparaging or no?
Good point. I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Hamish.
I was having a lot of fun.
You can leave it in there. But yeah, we're not gonna active. If you want me to disparage active listings, please visit houseeinstein.com and jump on the newsletter.
Jump on the newsletter,
yeah. Which I've committed to doing much more frequently. So expect one very soon. Okay. So
that's
super
data.
Interesting analysis. So that's our data drill down. Yeah. Let me find. Excuse me. Let me find my podcast game plan. I think I closed that file. Hamish, there it is. Okay.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Now I've got it open again.
Good deal.
I'm gonna leave this analysis open. So core takeaways for attached dwellings. There's opportunities. But probably the entry level is not something that you'll be super excited about. And there's a lot of affordable housing.
Yeah, I was going to say super affordable housing options. Yeah. Do you remember that listing? It was probably a couple years ago we had that. It was like 300,000 attached studio on Folsom.
Nope.
Okay. Well, it was kind of a nothing thing. I think Sophie got it, and it was still Nico did the video. But man.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I love that listing. That place was
I know.
great.
I think about it occasionally, and if my life and circumstances were differently,
you should have bought
it'd be right on Folsom. I couldn't at that time.
Bought it.
Couldn't have.
I know.
Yeah.
We could have worked it out.
Okie dokie. Oz, you've got an Old Tail listing in there.
All right. I do. We are here to talk about lessons from sales of the week. And these are recent closings, typically within the last week, that I feel illustrate price point and market conditions. Illustrate market conditions for certain price points and locations. All right, let's jump into it. Let me open up.
Yeah, I didn't mean to jump you right back into it. I was just
That's okay.
saw it. And I was like, oh wow.
I was looking at an inspection. An amendment to a contract, and I was getting distracted into an active deal, but that can wait until after the pod is complete.
I saw that text too.
For that deadline. All right, so our first sale of the week is 1409 Old Tail. And Old Tail is one of my favorite spots in the city of Boulder, and it is important to note that it is in the city. And that's because if it was in unincorporated Boulder County, it would be subject to the moratorium on large houses. You no longer can exceed the median size of your neighborhood in whatever arbitrary way that the county decides is your neighborhood. But in the city, you can. And this particular property sits on a full acre lot. It backs to the golf course. It is in one of the most gorgeous and sort of pastoral, in a way. I don't know what else to describe it. Like, I ride and run through here. It isn't feels really rural. It just feels very, I don't know. It feels very equestrian.
Pastoral might be the word.
It runs right along. There's a trail that runs through here, and it accesses back to the open space. Like when I'm trying to get my miles in, I start on Broadway and South Boulder Creek, and I run south, and then I run back north. Or I'll park out near. I'll park near. What's that cafe called? Walnut Cafe, and then run south because that's slightly uphill, and then run back north. And I'll go right through here on Old Tail, and it is just gorgeous. There are overhanging trees and lush lawns. There's also a lot of water, so you do get a lot of mosquitoes in this location.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
To know about, and a lot of it's in the 500-year flood because it's so close to Boulder Creek. Although that's going to change, I think, to some extent when all the engineering is done for CU South. And this particular house has been in the family since the 1960s. That's what the database says. The oldest trade is 68, but it was still between people with the same names. So it could go back. It's at least 1968, right? So we know it's probably older than that in the same family. All you need to know is it's been decades in the same family. And spectacular spot. Generously sized ranch built in 1965. They're probably the original owners. 5 bedrooms, 4 baths, plenty of space at 4,500 square feet, a 4-car attached garage. And it was listed with renderings. So this is what we like to do too. We like to hire an architect who will design a custom home, a rendering to represent what would be possible. And the listing agent is saying that it would be possible to build up to 10,800 square feet. So they designed one that was 8,440. I would really hope they did their homework there. And I'm assuming they did because there's an architect involved. But that is just, but basically what you're buying for this, what you're paying for is the lot. And yes, you will have to deconstruct the existing home, but it's built well after the war, 1960s. It's unlikely the city's going to try to keep you from tearing it down. And you potentially could almost you could more than double your square footage. And be in one of the most choice spots in Boulder. It's private, yet you're very close to the city. You're very close to open space trails. So spectacular, and that's what this largely is the existing house is...
It's a land play. Yeah.
Pretty much. The existing house is fine. You could live in it, but
totally.
If you're going to spend 2.4 or 2.5, you probably are looking at spending another 2 to build your dream home. And that is how it was marketed. It did take a while to sell. So it was originally listed at 2.85 in July, and they kept it at 2.85 for over a month, and then it went under contract 41 days into the listing period, and it sold for 2.45. So $400,000 off the list price, which is I think roughly 10%, right? No, it's almost 7. Hold on a second. Let's do the math. This is the problem with getting older. You're like, wait a
I'm
minute.
over here looking at it on maps. Let me see.
2450.
14%?
Yeah, 2850. So pretty substantial discount.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking at 14.3%. Thank you. So, but it's the fourth quarter, and aspirational pricing at 2.85 and over 30 days on market. They owned it for a really long time. I think it's a fantastic buy. So kudos to the buyer for acquiring truly what is a legacy type property that almost never, 1968 was the names go all the way back to that time period, and the home was built in 1965. So really good chance it's the original owners of just what is a spectacular property. Although I do want to mention the risks of posting all these photos of renderings. I would want a disclosure document that we would ask the buyer to sign, acknowledging that these drawings are just that. They are an artist's rendering of what we believe may be possible, but that you are strongly encouraged as a buyer to do your own due diligence and consult with your own architects. Do not rely on the ones that we hired, because by the time you go to build, the rules could have changed. And even though it's a local architect, maybe they screwed up. So you really want to do your due diligence if you're paying for. It's sort of the vaporware of real estate, right? You're buying the possibility that lives within a regulatory environment called the City of Boulder, and
which is so subject to change,
which is extremely difficult and just did change. I would consult with not just one architect, maybe 2 or 3 architects to get a consensus on yes, you could build what you really want here.
You've done that. I vaguely recall. I was very new to the team when you had the buyer sign a acknowledgement, right, that it was just renderings.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I
Very
remember
important.
vaguely being present for that. It's a great CYA, yeah.
So if I was also representing the buyer, I would also look at other land sales in the last 2 years and see if there's anything like this, because it's going to be tough to comp out. And then the last question is, okay, you can't really find comps. What do you think it's actually worth, and what can we get it for? And maybe you start the negotiations at $2 million, and you end up at 2.4. Either way, awesome deal for the buyer. I think it's a great buy, and they might even be able to live in it for a while. The risk of living in it, though, is that the rules change so substantially. Like if the NIMBYs protest really hard and they shut down large houses in the City of Boulder, you're screwed, right? You lost all that value. Mm-hmm. So you really want to get your permit filed ASAP. Like this is a decision where even if the design is not perfect, get that permit filed. Like this is not a park it for 10 years kind of investment.
That was going to be my question is you get the permit and then you have the ability to do it? We might be getting
the permit has a lifespan, and you can keep it alive for a pretty long period of time. I'm not sure what that lifespan is, but you definitely don't want to just sit.
You can
and wait.
Renew, I think, but yeah, you don't want to.
You can renew in Westminster. I don't know if that's true in the City of Boulder.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how long they would let you keep the permit live. I would assume it's at least a year and a half, but I don't really know.
And again, everything's subject to change, so
do not delay.
Yeah.
Do not delay. Okay. Next, 3470 16th Street. So I really like the spot. It is just south of Melody Park, but the problem is it's also directly across from the Iris ball fields, which are likely going to see some massive changes in the near future. I know there's a group of neighbors that are trying to prevent that from happening, but Boulder County owns that, and they have indicated that it's for sale. And who's going to most likely buy it is somebody that's going to develop a lot of housing, very likely to be attached apartments, townhomes, condos, and fill all that space with hundreds of potential units. And this particular location is directly across from that. So this is the classic example of buying a bad location because it's busy to begin with. And of course, it looks gorgeous inside. If you look at the photos, you're going to see a home that is just turnkey. It is spectacular. Everything looks current. Everything looks really, really nice. They've even added some funky lighting to the outside to make it look more visually interesting for a garage-forward house. The staging looks good. It is done, right? Like you just move in and enjoy a home. It needs nothing. It's very current. But it's also in a horrible location, and a location that is subject to massive risk. And I thought to myself, geez, who would encourage their buyer to,
hey,
it looks good, but who would encourage their buyer? And I looked it up, and I was like, who's this agent? And they've had their license for like a year. I don't know if they paid for the lead or how this happened, but I would, if you were my client, I would strongly discourage you and ask you to look at a whole bunch of other things with me, because I would feel really bad that you're subject to construction for the next 3 to 5 years. You're subject to a much more dense location than you thought you were getting. At 1.8, though, there's quite.
Talk about illustrating the closing table. Compromised location, but the inside is absolutely gorgeous and done up, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is exactly illustrating the closing table topic, Hamish. That's the point. And when you look at 1.8 to 1.9, there are currently 7 single-family detached houses on the market in Boulder, none of which are under contract. So
they might not know about
I think we'll leave it. I hope that they were advised about the upcoming development, because I feel like most of my buyers would have run away with that much uncertainty in the future over this location. But it's a cool property.
As the location sits, it's also cool. But we talked about the Boulder complex many pods ago now.
Yeah, that was a while ago. Mm. All right, our next listing, 1880 Kohler Drive. So, Hamish, you've been doing a lot of work creating content in West Highland Park. We had a listing earlier this year that sold well. This particular property, let me give you the basics, and then maybe you could fill in some of the location details. Mm-hmm. But this property hit the market in March, and it was listed at 1,987. And then it dropped after 2 months to 1,875. And then it dropped further a couple of months after that. First it was withdrawn, then it came back to market at 1,8375. And it finally sold for 1,792,500. It's a 1970s bi-level, larger than typical bi-levels at 2,800 square feet, 5-bedroom, 3-bath, only a 1-car garage, but the photos rendering, the last photo shows a make-believe 2-car garage somehow magically tacked on. This is the problem with AI, is that
it really AI.
Really, maybe it's possible, maybe it's not, but there's a photo of it.
It's got a chimney too now.
Yeah. So, I think the interior looks pretty nice. I mean, I wouldn't call it as done up as the last one, but it's not horrible. Like, some of the color tones in the bathrooms are a little off and that sort of stuff. I vaguely recall seeing this house, and my clients felt it was really kind of choppy, and that's why we didn't pursue it. And there was also a lot of construction, I believe, across the street. That was the other reason they weren't super excited by it, but it eventually sold for 1.8. But this location is a location that Ian, an agent on the team, has been really focused on understanding its history and the really unique open space that is mostly accessible to the neighbors that back to it. There's only one way into that open space that's not through a neighbor's backyard.
And it doesn't necessarily feel like you can get there you're supposed to be there otherwise, even the public access.
Right. It feels like you're not supposed to be there. Yep.
This is one, so Ian closed on, he listed, you two co-listed 2015 Kohler Drive at the start of the year. This is a house that came up around the same time that was benchmarked. And it was kind of, Ian talked about this house closing today. I was with him shooting a home that may be going to list next year. But a few differences between this one and the other one is Kohler Drive and Highland Park has this kind of mountain interior park that sure enough is public, but the vast majority of the people that are going to be accessing it are going to be homeowners whose backyards directly back to here we go, it's called West Highland Park. And so this particular home does not back to anything of the sort. I think that might have contributed to the longer time on market. Highland Park in general, I think the larger South Boulder, Table Mesa, Martin Acres, a lot of these areas were developed to kind of satisfy the workforce demands from the federal labs that have been built in the area, and that's kind of speaking more to the history of it. But Highland Park is almost like the I don't know if Upper Table Mesa, thinking of it as kind of like a little bit of a step higher. There's the further towards the further towards the foothills that you go, the more kind of custom builds you get, the more fancy homes. And this one being kind of really up towards the end of Highland Park. I'm pretty certain that we'll see this one being redeveloped and getting something else on. I'm really tripped up, Oz, at that picture that you talked about with the 2-car garage tacked on, because there's already it looks like a 2-car. Okay, never mind, that's a 1-car, but nope, very strange.
It's a 1-car. Yeah. And it's like the photo is also the reverse mirror image.
Right.
Because you're looking at the front of the house in the real photo and the garage is on the left. And then you're looking at the front of the house and magically the garage is on the right.
And the chimney's on the front of the house instead of on the side of the house.
And the chimney's been moved, like, okay. Like the entire chimney was moved in the photo. And I guess the reason this is important is that there's marketing and then there's deception. And it's become so easy to generate AI images that are difficult to tell from reality that you really need a bit of a discerning eye, and then don't ever take anything for granted, particularly from the listing agent, on what is possible. You really want to get your own consultation with a design professional who's familiar with the code, because you will be unpleasantly surprised if you believe the listing agent. And it's not that this listing agent is any more honest or dishonest than others. It's just a general rule. Don't believe the listing agent, including us. Don't believe us.
Core tenant. Yeah.
I mean, it's just a core principle that we represent the seller when we're on the listing side. And we will selectively tell you what you want to hear, and use sort of vague language like may be possible, could be possible, and then encourage you to consult with your own people. Sure, people build garages. People build garages in Boulder all the time. It's true.
Yeah.
People do build garages all the time, but that doesn't mean it's possible on your lot. And I believe West Highland Park also has an additional layer of regulatory burden that is not there are things that are recorded in the neighborhood subdivision plan that might also create limitations. And it's really important to understand those before you just merrily go to closing. And it's also important to understand those prior to the expiration of the appropriate deadline for you to do your due diligence. The contract breaks it out. So I think it's a cool house. I remember it being choppy. I remember the construction across the street being annoying. I took 2 or 3 buyers to see this house, and it just didn't feel great as a house. But below $2 million, it looks like a great price. So they'll probably do a bunch of remodeling anyway. And even though it doesn't back up to the open space, it's really close to all the trails. So probably a decent deal. Kind of a weird house. I would have told the buyer that you're going to likely be taking a long time to sell it in the future, because it clearly didn't run off the market, right? It didn't fly off the market. Buyers were not jumping all over it. Contrast to our listing at 2015 Kohler, better marketed, if I may say myself, we went way over. And that was largely the marketing that you and Ian worked so hard on putting together. So great job on that.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
2826 Broadway Street, 106, the Broadway brownstones. Everyone knows them. It sort of looks like something you might see in Brooklyn, or inspired by brownstones from the East Coast. But unfortunately is another one of these listings in a deeply compromised location, and that's Broadway. It's never-ending traffic. It's also now e-bikes that are, the Surons that kids are popping wheelies up and through traffic lanes. Literally, that's what happened last week as I'm driving up to the office on Broadway. We're cruising at 35, and suddenly, in between the cars comes an e-biker.
Dude,
with the Suron e-bike, no plates, popping wheelies, going right up Broadway during the middle of the day. 2 of them. And I was just blown away by that brazenness.
These are the e-bikes that look like dirt bikes, right?
Yeah, they're not bicycles. Yeah. They are motocross
and they're like
inspired.
$5,000?
Yeah, something like that. They're nuts, right? They're super powerful, tear the tires off the wheels kind of machines. Please don't buy your kids these things, by the way. Okay, so this particular brownstone has been on the market a long time because we always drove by the listing agent's signs, and her signs seem awfully reminiscent of our choices of sign colors years ago, so they always catch my eye. But hit the market, oh, this is going to be painful. So these people bought it in October. No, sorry. Hold on a second.
Oh, wow.
Backwards. Hold on one sec. Let me make sure I got this right. So 26 Broadway, unit 106. They bought it in 2013 for 1.1. Okay, yeah. So this is 12 years ago. They paid 1.1, and they just sold it for 325. So 1.325, which is pretty minuscule gain over a decade. And they originally had it listed at 2.57. So they originally listed it in September at over $2.5 million. It just closed for 1.3.
September of last year.
No, that's September of last year. So on the market for over a year, and dropped over $1 million in price. And the last negotiated discount, they had to take another $75,000 off to get it to close. 3 bedrooms, 4 baths, 2,600 square feet. These are, if you look at the photos, these are really nice. And I suspect they're built with a lot of sound deadening, so you don't really hear the traffic on Broadway. And if you're coming from a big city, the East or West Coast, maybe it doesn't bother you. But this particular spot is gonna bother most buyers. And so when you go to resell this thing in 5 or 10 years, I would expect very similar market performance. Like whatever that, I could do the internal rate of return, the rate of return between the 12 years of ownership. They probably put some more money in. My guess is it's like 0.5% or something, which really means they lost money, right, in real terms. I would expect the same thing.
When it all shakes out.
This thing is probably just going to skid sideways. Do not expect it to gain value. And it definitely doesn't help that there's a $2,600 a quarter HOA due.
Excuse me?
Yeah. $2,625 quarterly HOA due. So that's kind of painful to know you're going to spend more than $10,000 a year on association dues. Like what are you getting for that exactly? So that's the other question. I guess you have 4 guest parking spaces.
I mean, as far as like a condo, is this a condo? Call it.
It's a townhome.
Yeah, as far as townhome goes, I mean, they're pretty. They're updated. They look like they have nice amenities. Okay, the location. So, I mean, you're next to the ideal marketplace.
The association includes trash, snow removal, exterior maintenance, water, and sewer. That's it. So why is it $10,000 more than $10,000 a year? So that's the other thing that was probably pretty painful in the sale process is people look at that as being an extreme HOA and not getting a lot for it possibly. Although beautiful buildings in a very compromised location, and when they go to sell it, I suspect the same thing's going to happen. You're going to be dealing with a very long sale process, and you heard our closing table topic. It was all part of that. And you will likely have to update it dramatically to get it to sell in 10 years.
Yeah.
I love how it's described as a fabulous investment at an incredible price per square. Is it? Okay. All right.
The next one I thought was in the same spot.
It is almost. So I have sold units at the Newland Court condos. It's pretty much directly across the street. And there's a farmer's ditch that cruises through there as well. And this particular condo is a tiny, tiny 1-bedroom, right? It's only 470 square feet. It does have 1 car space in the underground garage. And these have been really nice for lock and leave granny condos. That's what I think of, like people that want to buy something to visit their grandkids. Or they want to have like a little pied-à-terre in Boulder. Some of them are right up against Broadway and exposed to the traffic noise. Some of them are 4 units in, and that's much more attractive. I'm not entirely sure which this one is. The photos show a lot of trees around it. So I think it's tucked in, but I would have to go look personally to see. I know a few years ago there was a special assessment to deal with all the stairs that were rotting at this complex. But HOA dues are still only $432 a month. So I think it's I think it's actually a very smart entry level if it's not right up against Broadway. And what caught my eye was actually that the seller of this unit is a individual who is actively involved in city politics on the left side, Eric Budd, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Other than he acquired it in 2011 for $157, and then 13 years later, basically doubled value. So not bad. And we'll leave the politics conversation aside.
Right around a 91% gain.
No, well, you got to annualize.
191%.
You got to annualize the gain, Hamish. That's why we have that little spreadsheet.
Excuse me.
I mean, we could annualize it if you want. I could dump it in there. It's super easy to access. Let's just do it for funsies. I should have done it for the. We'll do it for both. We'll do it for the other one too.
You call what did you say? Granny condos?
Yeah, like it's something that people want to be close to family. They want to have. It's not their primary home.
Well, I'm wondering, like, soon enough, could you call it like a Sundance condo or something?
Oh, maybe, because in particular, given that the city is now authorizing special event short-term rental licenses, this could be a cash cow for that 10-day period. It's only 10 days.
10 days.
So, maybe you get somebody that stays early and leaves late. So let's call it 2 weeks. Can you make enough in that 2 weeks? Short-term rent it as non-owner occupied? Maybe. Okay, so this property, 3025 Broadway, was acquired in 2011, May 17th specifically. So we'll put this into the spreadsheet. 5/17/2011 for $157. And we're going to say they put no additional money in, nothing. Let's just assume they put zero in. And they just sold it on what day? It closed on October 2025, October 10th, 2025. What's happening? 10/25, and they sold it for $300, which was $1,000 over list price for unknown reasons, and that's a 4.6% internal or
that's basically not crazy.
Yeah, it's 4.6% every year. That doesn't include any money they put in, and it does say recently updated with the remodeled kitchen. So I don't know if it doesn't look recent to me. It looks like that's what it looked like when they bought it, but that's okay. Let's just assume they put nothing in, and the best case scenario is 4.6%. And now let's look at 2826 Broadway, Unit 106, and they acquired this property for. Did I say 1.1?
Oh, they did not get a whole lot in back. Yeah,
so
1.1, I think. Yeah.
2013 is when they bought it, and they bought it for 1.1. Let's again assume nothing in, and let's assume the sale. Let's give the sale date is correct on the MLS of October 9th. And they sold it for 1.325. That's a 1.5%. Yep. Yeah. Even though they gained more, right? They had a $225,000 gain. That is an annualized appreciation rate of 1.5%, assuming no capital improvements, compared to 4.6. Although again, for the 4.6 says they put money in, but I don't. It doesn't look like it was recently done to me. So just two sides of Broadway, and
literally.
It's hard to go wrong with a super entry level condo that's very close to downtown.
Yeah, I bet the HOA didn't help too. The HOA costs, just the desirability.
No, just mentally, psychologically, people hate HOAs. They look at it like they're throwing money away every month and getting very little back in services. And then when you're suddenly talking about $10,000 a year, what are you getting? Water and sewer and supposed exterior maintenance. The other thing to think about,
trash too. But
the other thing to think about is what type of reserves are you buying into? Because if the complex is sitting on $2 million of reserves and you know they're going to redo the exteriors in 5 years, you're paying for that. Like, you're buying into what the owners before you have already contributed to reserves. But the place only has a $400 a month HOA and has no reserves, like Newland Court condos probably, like, I'm pretty sure they had to do a special assessment when all those stairwells needed to be rebuilt. Like, which would you rather have? Do you want the special assessment and the low HOA dues, or do you want the high HOA dues contributing to a shared piggy bank? And you got to make that decision as a buyer and fully understand what you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something I would never think of until you said it, so that's good to know.
Time for shameless self-promotion.
Yeah, that Old Tale home, would that have worked for?
Probably needed too much updating.
And
the
I
numbers
think
would have
maintenance,
worked.
right?
So this buyer is looking for preferably a primary bedroom on the main and some privacy from the neighbors. Not too big, not too small. The ideal house is a single-story rambling ranch that's been updated within the last 10 years and doesn't need a bunch of work. They love Fraser Meadows. They would consider Keewaydon. And they have not really ironed in exactly their price point, but that home on Old Tale might have worked, other than I think the layout may not have.
I think maintenance-wise, too.
And it was too dated, and it was too big. They really don't want to be that big.
So there are a few.
They don't want to be
matching. It is a ranch.
Anytime we've crossed 4,000 square feet, it's too big. So I would say the sweet spot is under 3,500 square feet and bigger than 2,200 square feet. 2,200 to 3,500, two-car garage, updated in the last 10 years, and somewhat private, but doesn't have to be perfectly private. That's what they're looking for. And we've gotten close a couple of times, but they're still looking. So reach out if you have that type of property coming to market, if you're thinking about selling it, if you are a listing agent with a line on that type of property that you plan to list in the spring, please reach out to us. We are on the hunt. And with that, Hamish, it's time to talk about the news.
Awesome. Well, first up on the news. Oh, yeah. So I must have just missed this. This happened over the weekend, right? The Caribou Village fire in Nederland?
Wednesday night.
Where was I? I just did not see it on the news.
I mean, it happened at 3 a.m. So we're talking about the Caribou Village shopping center, home to somewhere between 15 and 20 businesses, and right next to the grocery store and the Carousel of Happiness. And it burned... basically complete destruction. There's nothing left of it, and happened overnight. Owned by Thibault, and the company is planning to do some fundraising to help the businesses that have been impacted. For certain, I enjoyed there was a Mexican restaurant, Tres Amigos, I think. What was it called? We used to stop there en route when we're headed out of town because it was the perfect spot to grab lunch on the way out when you're headed up into the mountains. And it's really devastating from all those business owners and employees and the tax
Tres
base
Gringos.
for Nederland. Tres Gringos, yeah.
Yeah.
Did I say Tres Amigos? Tres Gringos.
Yeah, close,
great.
close enough.
Great spot, and really scary that this fire broke out in the middle of the night. I drove by it actually on Thursday afternoon. It was still smoking.
Did you drive by to check it out, or you were up in it? I mean, it's completely
We were up in the
unrelated.
mountains anyway, and
cool.
we'll get to that in my Carveout.
Oh, true. Yeah.
We'll get to that in the Carveout. Yeah.
Yeah. That sucks. It was like, that's aside from a few other streets, that was about it for where all of the big businesses were in Nederland. Linda's Pizza is where I've been. It saved our bacon a few times on some very poorly planned camping trips. We've gone there as refugees because we didn't bring a dinner. Yeah, that blows. I have some footage from like 2 months ago of it.
Well, I mean, thankfully no one was hurt. I have some footage too. I took some pictures of burritos and margaritas that we were enjoying. And it was just such. And I love Ned. I used to go up to Nederland every week to perform at the Wolf Tongue on open mic nights back in the early 2000s. I love that mountain town and often imagined actually living up there. I like small towns, and it's quirky and funky, and it's becoming a little more Aspeny, and likely will become a lot more Aspeny once this building is reconstructed. I imagine the rents are going to go up, unfortunately, and it's still going to probably take 18 months before there's a new building there. So there's a lot of people that are hurting from this. Luckily, there was no actual physical injuries of humans. I understand there were some animals lost in one of the businesses, but there were no humans hurt or injured or that died. But it's still something that the town is reeling from, and we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens. Yep.
You remember a while ago we heard whisperings of like a redevelopment thing in Nederland where they were going to put in like a kind of business district?
Oh yeah, there's plans underway. My understanding is Thibault's driving some of that.
Okay. Hopefully it accelerates it. But I think you're right. Rents are going to go
up. Supposedly Thibault's going to set up the Black Forest restaurant to allow for some of these businesses to temporarily relocate. That building has been vacant for 5 years and has 12,000 square feet of space. So there you go.
What do you know?
Conspiracy Corner is sort of triggering in my brain. Like, 3 a.m. there's a fire and you get to rebuild your dilapidated building completely.
Biting my tongue.
It's a Goodfellas moment, right? Like, yeah. Okay, all right. I know that there was supposedly plans for a nice hotel, and the town is buying Eldora, the ski resort. Yeah. And I-70 sucks, so more and more people recognize Eldora as a real community asset. You can go skiing half a day and be back at work really easily. So, okay, well, we're going to leave it at this before we go too far down Conspiracy Corner.
I know. We'll just report as it happens. I don't know.
I mean, we don't know any of this, right? So we're just conjecturing that there was a Goodfellas-like moment that happened up there. All right, let's talk about
scene. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't say which scene. Good point. We don't know anything. And we mostly feel deeply sympathetic to the business owners. Residents. These are all small businesses, including I used to take guitar lessons at the music shop up there 2 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let's talk about the. It's good news?
No, sarcasm. Yep.
Oh. Well, yeah. Okay, so Boulder County agreed to increase minimum wages to $25, and it's basically putting out of business a number of farmers,
small businesses.
Small businesses, yeah. I mean, this $25 an hour HOA. This year it's $16.57, but by 2030 it's going to $25, and that is effectively forcing out of business farmers, including a farm owned by somebody I know fairly well, Kilt Farm, and the cost of labor just cannot support agriculture if we're at $25 an hour. So this is a fight that's been going on in the county. It's something to pay attention to. I don't know how it's going to be resolved, but it's real. I know the owner, and I can confirm that he is shutting down operations because it's just no longer economically viable. And the cost of labor is a significant portion of that. Finding labor is also very difficult in Boulder County. We have a very affluent location, and this is probably unintended consequences.
Yeah. It's I get the idea, I get the mission, the whole point of it all, but there's kind of like there's small businesses that literally can't catch up with it and scale the same way. I think the kind of the targeted businesses, or in theory the businesses that can pay more, can, right? And the blanket policies are freaking rough.
The commission's gonna look at 5 different scenarios next week, other options in their work session. Yep.
Great. Hopefully they come up with something good.
I mean, it sounds great and noble to bump up minimum wage to $25 an hour, but it has real impacts to business owners, and not all of them are out there fleecing their workers, right? Like, with automation coming, with more and more AI coming, you're basically creating fewer and fewer jobs. Like, this could be writing on the wall in a lot of different locations.
Well, I'm saying if say you only have 100 employees, well, 100 is still quite a lot, but again, are there exemptions? Maybe you're only required to do a certain percentage of the minimum wage, and it's based by the amount of employees you have, or a blanket thing like this is under the assumption that businesses are just flush across the board. And especially where it's an ag business that's got super high labor and super slim margins as farmers do in general. Like, it's yeah.
I mean, they're dependent on nature on whether they make a profit or not, and it feels good to say we're bumping our minimum wage in Boulder to $25 an hour. I don't think that those that vote for those types of radical policies have an understanding of the impact on actually having the job. Like, the job itself will just disappear entirely because it's no longer an economically viable business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my whole thing is like, it's doable. It just needs to be implemented smartly. And blanket shit is just generalizations in general, as I make this generalization.
I mean, I get your point, Hamish, but I don't know how you would implement it smartly. Like, it's the policymakers.
Oh, I just said, right? Like, by a certain amount of employees that the business has, and different kind of more specifics than just a blanket. Here's $25 an hour. Okay. Right? Like, you can do it.
Your sound is going in and out.
I know. I just pushed the mic away as I readjusted. That's my bed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I hear your point.
Right?
I still don't think that that approach on the size of the organization works. I don't think that there needs to be a minimum wage so people aren't being exploited. 100%.
Yeah.
We have safety rules in this country. That's one of the reasons why we have environmental rules in this country. That's why we can't compete with the labor costs in places like China that basically sweep environmental regulations under the rug and don't have wage standards like we have, at least that I'm familiar with. And in a very liberal place like Boulder, which we know and love and participate in, there's a desire to do the right thing, but I don't think it's very well thought out at all. And this is a classic example of it not being very well thought out.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay, let's move on to the next story. And this is really just... Sorry, say that again?
I just said big agree. Yeah.
Okay. Let's hit this last story, and that's rates are now approaching a 1-year low. And the 10-year treasuries were trending almost to 4% today. So I think that it's quite possible that we're going to see significantly lower mortgage rates in the next couple of weeks. Keep an eye on that. And if so, it could reinvigorate the market. But I will add one more piece, and that is, the market is so regionally distinct. Like, the Northeast I've seen some charts recently. The Northeast has been on fire, while our local location has been kind of skidding sideways and down. Like, it all depends on where you're shopping for how active the market is or not. And usually it's tied to jobs. So it's kind of surprising to see this region be sort of moribund with inventory being high and prices coming down. But that's what's been happening. I think we're nearing the end of that. And we're going to see a pretty different market in the spring. At least that's my prediction with my crystal ball, which certainly has not always been accurate. So we'll see.
I mean, I think pretty much everyone's hopeful that that's the case. So just remember buying this house in 2022, being like, yeah, they'll come down like next year. The biggest one for me, at least if you are rate sensitive, is just make sure you can afford it as it is.
Right. Don't assume. Buy the house, marry the rate. Or sorry, date the rate. Marry the house, date the rate.
But
and hopefully
be able to date the rate.
Be able to date the rate. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Hamish, we are nearing the end of our pod. Should we hit carve-outs?
Yeah, and I thought we were going to be earlier than 2 hours, but I think we're going to be around 2 hours. I think Party House, Osmond.
Blow past it. All right, here's my carve-out. We just had a fantastic weekend of hosting a large number of friends, I would say chosen family, at our house, and it was fantastic. It's the largest group we've hosted. Lots of prep. It's amazing how many house projects get done quickly when you know you've got all of these people flying in from all over the country to come visit. The weather was fantastic. I appreciate your coverage for showings and other activities. And overall, it was a fantastic weekend, and I was really thrilled to have it. Key takeaways are just that when it's planned well, big parties can just be so much fun. And this was the first big party we've thrown at the house. I might need a few days to continue to recover from all of the activities, but it was great. So that's all the only carve out I have, other than we had a DJ. We had like people sleeping all over the house on all sorts of inflatables. I had somebody here in my office. We did the cruiser ride on Thursday. We did a little mountain drive for fun to check out what was left of the color. We did a lot of hiking. We ate some amazing food. We went to the Gold Hill Inn, saw a honky-tonk band. I mean, it was just spectacular. They started arriving on Thursday. The last group departed on Monday. And we'll do it again. We'll see. What an event.
Nice.
I wish I could share more details about it, but that's basically the key in a nutshell. These are very, very close friends, and it was just a joy to share Colorado with them and have such perfect weather. And this particular house has great mountain views, and I think they really got the Colorado lifestyle, at least the Colorado mountain lifestyle, for the weekend.
Yeah. We had a little team meeting up there, and kind of unrelated, but cruiser stuff. After bombing down your hill, Oz and the bike, I could smell brake pads. I've never smelled brake pads off of a mountain bike before.
I bet. Like, wow. I bet you they were getting hot. Yeah.
And soft.
It's 1,000-foot drop from this house to where your car was parked, down twisty mountain
I beat
roads.
Sophie down.
Good.
Yeah. But
excellent.
There was a little bit where the brake power was like loosening, and I wasn't slowing down, and I was like, okay. But we made it, so it's good.
Excellent. Yeah. All right, tell us about your carve-out, Hamish.
Yeah, this one is a little idea that my friend Ben and I have been workshopping for a bit. But as we get to do more hikes over the weekends and go to various different trails and stuff, one thing we've kind of thought would be fun to start keeping track of is how many people we say hi to, and then how many highs we get back. And breaking it out by region, locale, and trail, and then time of day. And so he's going to have the counter for like how many people we see, and then I'm going to have the counter for how many highs we get back. We're going to, like if it's a group of 3 and we get a high back from that whole group of 3 counts as one type of situation, or, try and get the detail right. But I think all trails...
It's very scientific, Hamish.
Yeah. Well, it's All Trails is sorely missing a trail friendliness rating, and I think maybe we'll put together something like that. It could be kind of fun. It's a lighthearted carve out, but I think just kind of fun. Golden's really friendly, at least the few trails that we've done there, and then Boulder's pretty solid too. Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah. Easy little carve out.
We're
at 2 hours exact. Yeah.
Well, friends, I think this is the point where we acknowledge you have squandered 2 hours with us with the House Einstein podcast. And as usual, we deeply appreciate your time and attention for joining us, your comments, your thoughtful reflections. It does mean a lot to us that you spent this time with us, and we hope you found this podcast entertaining. If you'd like to get more from House Einstein, you can sign up for our newsletter. It's at houseeinstein.com. You can also check out our social media. You'll find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, and Blue Sky. HouseEinstein.com is the best place to sign up for the newsletter. You'll see some content there as well, although it's not quite as current as this podcast, so don't expect it to be refreshed quite as often. And again, thank you for joining us. And if you wish to give us more feedback, we're always all ears. And we look forward to connecting with you next time.